In today's video, we're gonna answer a question that I get all the time, which is, how do I set my deadlines as an indie author or self-published author? How do I know what they should be? How do I stick to them? All that goodness. I have a publishing timeline template or a publishing plan that I usually tell people about when they ask me this, because this whole thing, the template plus the, what is this, like 15+ page tutorial, is a freebie on my newsletter. All you have to do is go to my website, click the button that says sign up for newsletter, input your information, and you'll get it emailed to you along with some other goodies. I will link that below, but this has been my freebie for many years, and I'm super excited to walk you through it today because it's been a couple years since I've talked about it. I feel like not that many people know unless they actually go to my newsletter, sign up, and they're like, wait, you have this awesome freebie. We're gonna talk about deadlines, and I'm going to use a real life example, but I specifically wanted to talk about it today because all 5 books in the Marketing for Author series are officially out as of today. And the 5th and final one right here is about how to plan a profitable book launch. So I figured this was very applicable and it would be something that we actually talk about in chapter 4. And so I'm going to be talking about how to create a publishing timeline specifically, and that's what this video is going to be about, and we're going to give you some examples from this chapter, but there's a lot more in here. And then Mandy is actually going to do a video on her channel about how to create a marketing timeline. So you can go check that out. I'll link that below as well. That is book 5, and it is clearly for people who are ready to do a book launch, which means that it's not just for self-published authors. I think a lot in here applies to traditionally published authors as well. Secrets to selling books on social media is for all authors, whether you're published or not, traditionally or self-published, doesn't matter. The goal here is to get to know your target readers, how to market to them effectively, and once you have books out, how to sell your book to them more effectively and actually enjoy it on both ends. Your readers enjoy it too. And that includes talking about your book long before it's published. This just came out this month as well. Book Sales That Multiply is about advertising specifically. So this one is mostly for indie authors because you're going to have more access to advertising dashboards and you're going to have a marketing budget, whereas you might hope that traditional published authors, publishing companies would do this step for them. Grow Your Author platform though is again for all authors, whether you're traditional or self-published, because the idea is that all authors should have a website, email marketing, aka your newsletter, and other fun content marketing strategies in here. And last but not least, the first book in the series is How Your Book Sells Itself, and this is the most basic. It sets the foundation for your book itself and how that is your strongest marketing tool, and how getting this right is going to make everything else more effective for you in marketing. And this one is just for indie authors because pretty much everything in these 10 ways your book can sell itself is something that an indie author has control over, whereas in traditional publishing, your publisher has control over that. That was a quick rundown of these. They can be read in any order. I'm trying to think of the other frequently asked questions. I should mention that there's still ribbons on these last 2 because these are actually my proof copies. I'm waiting on my final copies in the mail because they both came out this month. So again, happy release day to book 5. Very excited that the Marketing for Author series is complete. Now it's time to set some deadlines and walk you through my personal process. And again, this can apply whether you have the exact same deadlines as me or not. You can apply these strategies to your own deadlines. I think it's going to be really helpful for you. So let me bring you, I'm gonna kind of angle you like over my shoulder so that you can see me writing it out. Here's the template. I tried to make it all fit on one page. That was important to me because what I have done with this in the past, and it depends on my mood, honestly, and if I have space for it, but I will actually like put this up on the wall when I'm done with it, somewhere that I can look at it constantly and see my deadlines and have them front of mind, because that's also very helpful for keeping deadlines, is knowing what they are and making them a firm rule. Like, I am aiming for this, gonna make it happen. And I'm just gonna say this now because otherwise I'm gonna repeat it for every step. There are a good 15 to 20 pages in here that will be explaining each of these steps, breaking down why I do it, how I do it, and what kind of time frame I would typically suggest in case you're not sure and this is your first time and you kind of just need somebody to give you an estimate, and then you can kind of feel it out, decide if it was enough time for you, if you needed more, or maybe you needed less for different things. So this is very flexible, okay? For the most part, up until a certain point, you are setting deadlines for yourself, but if you need to, they can be moved. And then at a certain point, once you announce your release date, after you figured it out, that's when you're gonna wanna be really strict with yourself and try to stay on top of it. Okay, I'm trying to think how you'll be able to see this. All right, I hope you guys can see this. I'll try to give you a couple different angles in case this is tough, but the first thing you're gonna do is obviously put a title here. If you don't know yet, that's okay. You can just put your working title or your project title here. And I was trying to think what would be the best of my books right here to give you an example, but honestly, they've all been super different. I feel like The Stolen Kingdom took longer because I was actually working on all 4 books at once, so it took about 1.5 years, versus other books have taken roughly 1 year exactly. And then The Secret Gift, which is smaller and something that I was much more comfortable with and knew what I was doing at that point, only took 4 months. So at this point, I actually think the most helpful thing to do is I've got a calendar pulled up, and I think I'm going to actually work on, again, I don't really have a name for this, so this is the work in progress title, Jezebel Book 2. Okay, so what I think I'm gonna do is give you an example with that, because that way I really can show you how it's a guesstimate. Like, I honest to goodness don't know, especially with a baby on the way. I have no idea what this is gonna look like. So I'm gonna walk through the one that's just for 1 book, but again, there's a 3-book option, and then you have how to use this template and all the steps explained in detail, so you can check that out after this video for sure. But the first step is outlining, and I'm a firm believer that you only need 1 to 2 weeks to outline. I don't think you actually need as much time as people tend to take, because the truth is, for most of us, we won't know until we start writing. My personal belief is start writing sooner rather than later. Don't let this be months and months of outlining, or you're never gonna get through the rest of the steps. And the goal, again, of setting deadlines is to actually have that forward momentum that moves you through each step. That's our goal. Let me actually use the calendar on my phone so that we don't have to keep jumping around. So today is the 20th. Let's say that I was starting literally tomorrow. I'm planning today and I'm starting with my plan tomorrow, which is the 21st of October, okay? So in that case, I would go from October 21st to November 4th. But again, we're planning ahead, and I said 1 to 2 weeks. So we're gonna give ourselves a deadline that lets us start writing on the 1st of Nano. So I'm gonna say October 31st. October 21st through 31st, that's my deadline. And the nice thing about that, if you guys have been watching my vlogs, you know that I actually did already outline, but I've had way too much going on. I just told myself, you know what? This is wild. I do not have time for this. So I'm actually just going to start my first draft on November 1st. And if you've heard about NaNoWriMo, then you know that National Novel Writing Month is about writing a novel in just 30 days in the month of November, but really it's about writing 50,000 words, and I don't really know how big my book is going to be. I go into how to calculate that based on your word count, how many words you can write per day, and a ton of other questions to ask yourself here in this template. So that's something that you're going to want to go over, but in this case, for the sake of making it easy, let's say that I want to use the month of November. I don't actually know if I'll make it. If baby comes, I am not going to make this. So for me, personally, this is a very tentative date, and just keep that in mind. Like, you're setting deadlines, but life happens. If you have to move them, you have to move them, and you can always print out this template again. But typically, my favorite amount of time to draft, I should have put this in here, is 1 to 2 months. The happier side is 1 month, but often bigger books take longer. So 2 months it's still pretty stressful, but writing a first draft really fast is extremely beneficial. I have a lot of reasons for it. I'll link this video below on fast drafting if you want to know more. The next step is taking a break. And I talk about this in the template, how this can be as long or as short as you're able to do. So this can be anywhere from, I would say, 2 to 6 weeks or more, honestly. Sorry, my writing is terrible. But the idea here is to get rid of writer's blindness, where you've spent all this time drafting really close to the story, really focused on the nitty-gritty details. You just need to step away so that when you come back to edits, you have fresh eyes and you actually know what you're trying to do with the story. And so I find this break to be extremely valuable, and it's kind of handy because baby A is actually due on December 8th. So normally I would just make it a month, but the issue here is that I really don't know what life is going to look like after he arrives. So this is a really realistic estimate of a timeline, and it shows how with each novel it might change, because normally I would put December 31st and I would come right back into editing January 1st, 2022. Like, let's go. I am raring to go. But from what I'm gathering from the people in my life, I have so many wonderful people who know more about this than me. I'm gathering that 6 to 12 weeks minimum is what you want to take. And so that's a good 3 months. So I'm actually going to estimate all the way to the end of February. And I actually have to look to see, does February have, 28 days in 2022. So this is why it's helpful to have a calendar handy. So we're going to put February 28th. This next step is probably one of the most anxiety filled because you usually see the most. You come back to it with fresh eyes, and at this point you're like, holy crap, there's so much that I need to do. And I go through this in more detail, but I broke up the self-edits in this section into two, when the reality is that you might do just one big pass of self-edits, or you might do 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 passes, and you might jump around so that it's not even clear where one round of editing starts and another begins. But the reason I broke this up into a fast read through and then developmental, and honestly I think I will actually put other as well when I upload this new version to my newsletter, is because the fast read through is trying to get a reader's perspective of your story, getting the bird's eye view, so to speak. And this is going to help you because back when you were writing, you were very zoomed in. If you were looking at a tree, you were looking at the bark on the tree and, you know, putting on one leaf at a time. But now you need to step back and see the forest. You need to know what exactly the whole big picture is. So the faster you can do this step, the better, while still making some good notes on what you want to change. For me, I'm a pretty fast reader, but again, you're making notes as you go. So I aim for about a week. And let's be real clear, this point in life and on is an absolute blank slate to me. I feel like it's a cliff and I don't really know what's going to happen when I jump off of it and the sweet little baby gets here. But let's pretend that I'm operating under my generally normal timelines just to put something on the calendar and see if I can do it. I would like to take a week to read, and weekends are hard because there's usually stuff going on. So I'm going to say March 1st to 8th. This would be how fast I normally would do a fast read through, because honestly, if it's taking you longer than that, you're going to start forgetting what you've read. If I can't do it this week, say this week is really busy because this is actually our anniversary week we'll be married 6 years at this point, then I might want to push that out. I might think, you know what? This is not doable with a new baby plus an anniversary that we're trying to celebrate, and maybe just getting back into it, that's too much. So let's say instead that I want to be super realistic. So I'm going to start on the 6th through the 12th. And this next step of developmental edits is when you begin implementing all the notes that you took during the fast read through. Again, the template goes over that in detail. Don't worry. I have this urge to explain it to you, but I do want to encourage you to download it because I tried really hard to explain and give examples in the template. And this time frame honestly will include other edits as well. At least for me, your edits might be different and everybody approaches editing different. So this is just my personal preference and the stages that I like to go through, that if you're brand new, these will hopefully give you a starting point, but feel free to adapt the template and change things as needed. But when it comes to self-edits, I usually take a month. So that would be March 13th, right? Through the next month, April 13th. I don't really need a calendar for that. I just plan to finish here. And my goal will be to have done the bigger picture edits, as well as most likely some of the smaller edits during this time frame. Even though this is my standard, I'm gonna have a brand new baby. So is this doable? I don't know. If I was being really careful, really cautious, and I wanted to do a timeline that would give me a sense of the longer end of things, I might change this to the 30th. But because I'm me, because I like to be optimistic, I usually think I can do more than I can do, I'm gonna leave it on the 13th because at this point, nothing is set in stone. You don't have to set things in stone until you announce your cover reveal and your release date. And we'll get to that. All right, so requesting beta readers is where things start to overlap. And this is something that I like to give the beta readers at least 1 to 2 weeks notice, sometimes even more, like 3 or 4 weeks, so that they can tell me if they actually have time and if they actually are able to read. And so if you are requesting beta readers for the first time, you would also probably want to build in a couple weeks to be asking and putting up a sign up or asking in other places, depending on how you do it on social media, etc. I might, for example, if I were brand new, I might ask my beta readers all the way back at the beginning of March. But because I have a really awesome beta reader team, I feel pretty good about asking them at the beginning of April after I've started some of my developmental edits and I know if I'm gonna make this deadline. And sometimes for me, this editing step blends with the editing for beta reader step, and it's sort of a smooth transition. You almost don't see the difference because they're so similar. But in this case, I'm gonna take the rest of that month. I'm gonna say April, April 13th through to the 30th. And that way I am spending the whole month editing. And then my goal, as you can see, I'm just going with the next date. So after the 30th, wait, does April have 30 days? Yes, it does. Okay. Now that I'm looking at a calendar though, this is honestly what you should do is you should look at, is that actually a good day to send, or would it be better to send to betas on the weekend? So maybe the 29th. This is going to be messy, but it's going to give you guys a good visual. I'm going to change this to the 28th, and then I'm going to change this. This is going to be a little messier. Let's see if I can make it look semi-pretty for you. No, I think this is going to be a fail, but April 29th, because again, as you saw here, that's a Friday, and I like the idea of sending to betas on a Friday because they can start reading over the weekend and hopefully get off to a really nice start. And I talk about beta readers a lot on this channel, so I will link this playlist right here where I have 6 videos on beta readers at this point, including my updated process. But typically it's anywhere from 2 weeks for a really short book like this one, this was super fast, to maybe 5 or 6 weeks for a longer book, especially if you haven't worked with these beta readers before and you're new to the beta reader process. Since I'm not new to it, I feel pretty confident about doing a shorter time frame, but I don't know how long this next book is going to be. So my average for beta readers has always been about a month. So let's look at the calendar, and May 29th is a Sunday, so that's actually a pretty good day to ask them to finish by May 29th. This step right here, when you start editing for beta reader feedback, I'm going to take a full month starting on May 30th to June 30th. We're already halfway through, and I think you're probably getting the idea. After you just scribble in guesstimates and you get to the end, and you might have found that you do a lot of this like I do, you can print out a fresh one, write it in really clean, or even do a PDF on your computer for something pretty to put on your wall, and again, be able to look at your deadlines. But let's go to the next one, which is editing for your editor. And this again blends with the editing based on beta feedback quite a bit, but I kind of separate these because sometimes I just need a little bit of extra time. I like to get through the beta feedback, have a deadline for that, and then take one more self-editing pass at the novel, thinking of the editor instead and double checking that I got everything. Let's take a look at our calendar and start with July 1st. And honestly, I only really need a week for this, hopefully at this point, because I'm just kind of skipping around, catching any last minute things that I think of. And so at this point, I would be able to send to my editor on July 8th. Now, this is really important to pause here because, of course, it is depending on another person. And you'll notice that whenever something is dependent on another person, I put it in bold on the template. The reason this could be an issue is if I wait until the last minute to hire an editor on this date, it's going to be very unlikely that they're going to have room for me. So I actually typically will book my editor further back. But now that I know this is the date that I want to send it to them, I'm going to start asking them and booking my editor back here, probably in April or even further back, maybe in February or even in January. I could book an editor that far back if I felt confident that I could make this date. Now again, I've published a lot of books, not just fiction books, but also nonfiction books right here. And so I've done this enough to normally be very, very confident. And I would probably book my editor back after finishing the first draft. I would feel confident enough all the way back then. But because I have a baby on the way, I am much more in the shoes of a brand new debut author, just trying to figure out what it's going to look like and not really knowing for sure. So in this case, I might wait till somewhere more around April when I'm working with beta readers before I book an editor. And at that point, some editors are booked. So I might find that they say, I'm so sorry, I am booked for July and I'm booked for August, but I can take you in September. And at that point, I would scribble out this date and readjust. But let's pretend that I have this date for now. We're just doing tentative dates for the things that depend on other people. And for the most part, I have found that editors typically take 1 month to read and edit. And that means as long as things go well, my editor will finish around August 8th. At this point, I'm going to look at a calendar because that is a Monday, and I can sometimes do all my edits in 1 week when I'm completing the editor's notes, which is our next step right here. But again, with a new baby, I don't know if that'll be doable. So let's say I'd like to take this week and then I'm going to give myself an extra buffer week, and I'm going to try to complete them by August 19th. At that point, August 20th is a Saturday, but we're going to go with it. And that is when I would begin proofreading, except I'm going to pause here and I'm going going to explain this more in the template, but I like to read from a proof copy. So I actually wait to do this step until I have a proof copy. So we're actually going to jump down to here and we're going to order a proof copy. But to do that, that's actually dependent on this formatting step. And formatting is something I personally do DIY. I have this whole entire series right here that I will link below if you want to know how I do my DIY formatting. But I write in a formatted template and then I usually take about, I would say, I guess 2 to 3 days to finalize the formatting. So actually that's what I would do first on August 20th. That was a Saturday. I don't usually work Sundays, so I'm going to give myself till the 23rd. Then I'm going to order a proof copy on August 24th. And again, in the template, I talk about how different print-on-demand companies take different amount of times to get you that proof copy. But I typically order from KDP. So KDP is super fast. I usually expect them to get the book to me by a week later, if not sooner. I've had them do it as early as 4 days, but we're going to guesstimate August 31st. So then here again, I have to scribble because I was getting ahead of myself, but proofreading does not begin until the book arrives for me because I want to proofread the physical book, which, if you're curious, arrives like this with a not for resale. And then I actually do my proofreading notes right in a document like this. And again, I have a video on that right here that you can check out, and I'll link that below if you want to know more about how I proofread. But looking at our calendar, we can start on September 1st. And then just like the fast read through, I like this step to be as quick as possible so I can again get that bird's eye view, that reader's perspective. So my goal with a new baby, we'll see how it goes, would be to read in a week, finishing by September 7th. So we've just filled in those 3. They kind of work in tandem, as you can tell. And once you finish your proofreading and you implement those proofreading notes, this is when the book is going to be done. You're actually going to have a complete manuscript that's fully ready to go. But as you can see, we still have a lot of sections to fill out. This section on is more about the publishing and marketing, whereas this section and up was about writing the book and preparing the manuscript itself. So now a lot of these things that we're going to talk about are happening during the writing and editing process. But I keep them separate in their own section like this instead of bumping them up because I do need to know this full timeline first before I can accurately make good judgment calls for when these other deadlines are going to happen. This is when our calendar is going to come into play quite a bit more because I want to have my cover design done long before that September 7th deadline. But I don't want to hire them too soon before I know what the book is about. I don't even know what the title is yet. There's a lot of details I haven't figured out. So usually the best place to hire a cover designer is somewhere within this section. After the first draft, maybe during your break, you could do some research. And then especially as you're doing your edits and you're beginning to be confident that this is the right story and you have a title and you know what it's about at this point, maybe you have to work with beta readers before you really feel confident about all of that. Maybe you need their help figuring out which title is the best title and getting their opinions on that. But the good news is that you don't have to have all this information when you hire the cover designer. You just need it for when you begin working with them. So I like to hire them during the earlier editing stages, somewhere in the 2nd, 3rd, or maybe 4th draft. And then I hire them for a date further out to begin working with them, typically around the time where I send it to my editor, because then I have that whole month away from the book to work on marketing things like this and spend time thinking about what do I want the title to be and making that decision and sending all the information to the cover designer. So in a perfect world, I might choose to work with a cover designer sometime right in the middle of this. Maybe like mid-July, I could start working with them on, say, the 18th. And I'm again going to update this template so that it includes work with, because I think they are 2 deadlines. So the hiring deadline, where you're going to spend time figuring out who you want to work with and then asking them what their schedule looks like, you might do that all the way back in March. I'm just going to list the whole month of March, but then I want to work with them sometime in July. And the reason that I'm not putting more specific dates is, again, because this is in bold. This depends on another person. It depends on what their schedule looks like. They might tell you, I'm so sorry, I don't have anything in July, but I can get started with you on August 1st. And then you would say, okay, awesome, let's plan on that. Now, we talked about working with your editor back here because, again, that was part of the writing and editing process, but you do have to actually hire them. And along with that, you have to research and find them. But like I said, this is something you're going to have to do long before you actually work with your editor, because editors can be booked up for months, just like cover designers, which means that I would also probably want to be looking for an editor right around this time as well. And honestly, editors can book out at least my favorite editor, Natalia Lee, shout out to her, can book even further back. I think she's booked out like half a year. So I could actually use my break to find and book an editor if I felt confident about this date. So let's pretend I did use my break and I book in January or February. Those two things are happening much earlier on, but we needed to know the writing process before we could plan out when to start that. These are deadlines we're going to want to keep in our back pocket, but then there are others that come in later in the game, like the synopsis or the back blurb, which is that description that a reader is going to see on Amazon when they decide whether or not to buy your book. I have two stages. I like to write the rough draft for my betas so that they know what the story is about when I'm asking them if they want to read it. So that would mean I'd need to have it by April 1st. But then I like to have my final draft, and again, sorry this is messy, by the time I start working with my cover designer, because they're going to need to know that information not only to design a good cover that reflects the story, but also because if you're having a full paperback wrap, then they're going to need to be able to put the blurb on the back like this. And since I said I was working with a cover designer in July, I would want to have a finished back blurb by June 30th or even sooner. Once you have your cover design completed and your back blurb, you are ready to upload to the print-on-demand company. If all has gone well with my cover designer, we probably would spend a whole month working on the cover. Just keep in mind that it could take longer, so I might give myself a little buffer time. But let's say that the cover and the back blurb and everything I need to upload to the print-on-demand company is ready by August 10th. So that would be my goal, to have a little bit of buffer time. But the reason that I need to know this information is because this sets up the pre-order as well, and you have to submit that pre-order a few days in advance before the pre-order link will be live. And I personally think it's really, really valuable to share the pre-order when I share the cover reveal. So I'm announcing the release date, but also the pre-order, and I'm going to update this on the form as well. Don't worry. I think it's extremely important to have that pre-order linked up. And because KDP says that they take anywhere from 1 to 3 days, I'm going to guess that it would be uploaded by the 13th, and I would be able to gather the links, maybe send a newsletter on the 15th, and then do my big cover reveal announcement on August 16th. That's really exciting. This is getting real. So now we have sending ARC copies. I intentionally didn't put any other big marketing goals and deadlines besides these two, the cover reveal and the ARC copies, because other marketing goals and deadlines are honestly going to depend on each individual author, and they change, and that's okay. But the cover reveal and the ARC copies are two of the biggest marketing tools you can have in your back pocket, and I talk more about this in here as well and explain more about that. But if you want to know, I also have this video right here about how I send ARC copies, and I think it's really valuable to do that at least a month before release. And to do this, you obviously need to have your manuscript finished and ready to go, as well as the cover and of course the blurb, because how are you going to convince your ARC readers to read if they don't know what it's about? Knowing all that, I would usually do ARCs after a cover reveal and also after the proofreading and formatting have been done. And so we already saw up here, September 7th is when I guesstimate that the book will be done. But I'm going to go ahead and update this template to also request ARC readers first, because this is actually also a two-step. So when I request, I want it to be about 2 weeks before I'm actually ready to send it out. So if I know I want to send them by September 7th, that's when it'll be done. Maybe I'll send on the weekend again. So let's say September 9th. Then I want to start asking for ARC readers 2 weeks before that, which would be August 26th. But really, just keep in mind that you're talking about it that whole 2 weeks. You're mentioning it on social media, putting up reminders, but then you're actually going to send the ARCs 2 weeks later, and we decided on September 9th because that's a Friday, and I just feel like that's a good time for people to start reading. Now, a lot of other marketing goals and deadlines are going to happen starting with the cover reveal and on. And in case I didn't mention this enough at the beginning, we do have 5 books on this topic. So I will link all of these books below along with the series page, because they are actually free to read on Kindle Unlimited. But these steps can take as long or as short as you want them to. I think they're probably going to start, for me, with that August 16th cover reveal right here. And then they're gonna last for 1, 2, maybe 3 or even more months depending on when my release date is. So I'm gonna leave that blank for a second because our last section here is buffer time. And I talk about this a lot in the template, but things go wrong. I have talked about this so many times before. You never know exactly what might happen. You might have your editor needing more time, or your cover designer needs more time, or maybe uploading to the print on demand company there are errors and you have to go back and figure that out. Whatever the case may be, you want to give yourself some buffer time. And I personally like at least 1 to 2 months of extra time that may get eaten up by some of these steps that was unexpected. So especially for me with a brand new baby and I don't know what life is going to look like, I would verge on this 2-month time frame. All right, let's pull up our calendar. We're going to take that September 7th day when the book itself was done right there, and I'm going to go a full 2 months. So 1 month, October 5th, 2 months, November 2nd, and that time frame is my buffer time. And I don't personally love releasing books during NaNoWriMo, so I might jump back just 1 week to October 25th right here, which is a Tuesday. And again, I talk about this in the template, why Tuesdays are valuable, but I also give you some other options to consider so that you can know if you want to do a Tuesday release or maybe a different day. But again, we had our buffer time was September 8th, right? Based on the day after this through technically November 2nd, or again, because I don't want to release in November, I'm going to jump back just 1 week to October 25th. There we go. So our marketing goals and deadlines are also going to be through October 25th, and technically further out than that as well, but we'll just say the 25th for now because you want to keep talking about your book after release as well. Look at that. We officially have a release date, and that is how you go through the template. I hope this was helpful for you. Give this video a thumbs up if you liked it. And again, it's in my newsletter, my author newsletter, which is linked below. It'll be the first link that you can click and you can go grab this for free if you'd like to. And I am going to put an updated version of it up on my website before this video goes live. And last but not least, again, happy release day to Plan a Profitable Book Launch and to this series being finished. I hope you guys liked this video. I hope it was helpful for you. And until next time, I hope you enjoy this series and I'll talk to you again very soon. Bye.
It started